The whole meeting for November 18th, 2025 to order. Our first order of business is the Crow Wing County 4-H report. Mr. Hanson.
Good morning, Mr. Chair and Commissioners.
Good morning.
Tony Hanson, Regional Director with the University of Minnesota Extension. Pleased to be before you all this morning. Extension's mission is to make a difference by connecting community needs and university resources to address critical issues in our state. One of the most impactful ways that we live out this mission is through our 4-H program, which helps young people develop leadership, citizenship, and life skills. Today, my colleagues Shanna and one of our regional staff, Cassie, will share how our 4-H program is making an impact on our youth and families here in Crow Wing County. This work is possible because of the strong partnership and investment from Crow Wing County, and we deeply value your commitment to youth development. Thank you for your continued support of Extension and our 4-H program.
Thank you.
Hi, thank you for allowing us to be here today. My name is Shanna O'Shea. I'm the Crow Wing County 4-H Extension Educator, and with me is my colleague. Go ahead.
Cassie Gerling. I am the Regional Educator in the Northeast region for Minnesota 4-H. So, along with our county program, Crow Wing County 4-H, Minnesota 4-H is divided up into 5 regions for our staffing plan, and we're a part of that Northeast region. So in each of those counties on the screen, there is at least one county educator per county, and then we have Shoshana and Crow Wing County. And so behind each of those counties is a regional educator team. And so from the top, I'll just walk down kind of what each of those responsibilities are. We have Jenna Claypool in the volunteer systems role, and she ensures that our volunteers have role descriptions, and so their work is clear and defined as to what they can do within those roles in Crow Wing County. We also provide consistent volunteer training so that those volunteers feel equipped and confident to provide positive youth development programming. Then we have David Foley, who is our animal science educator. So what he does is ensures that we have animal ID systems in place so that it's fair and equitable for everybody who is competing in those programs, and also provides educational opportunities at the local, regional, and state level. And then we have me, who is a civic engagement and leadership educator. So my focus is, again, providing those scaffolded leadership opportunities from the local, regional, state, and national levels, and then also working with Shoshana to strengthen her youth leadership programming within Crow Wing County. So we do a lot of work with the ambassador program, which you'll hear a little bit more about later on. Then we have Lori Hall. She is somebody who specializes in the finances and the risk management pieces, so ensuring that our programs are safe. And we are in the green for finances. Then over on the right-hand side, we have Kate Preiner, who is our quality program system specialist. She will go out and observe our educators in the teaching role to ensure that those programs are, again, quality. We use a quality youth program pyramid to ensure that we have all of those pieces in place to make sure that they're good spaces for our youth to be in. And then we have Jan Dardowski, who is our program leader, and she is both Shoshana and I supervisor, but more importantly, make sure that all of those programs are strategically and she provides direction for intentional program design. So our vision for our Minnesota youth is that we want them to thrive, and so we want them to be confident in who they are. We want them to be successful in what they're doing, and we want them to feel connected to others in their community and outside their community. And so we do this by providing meaningful experiences and building those relationships, and 4-H helps those youth discover their potential and create positive change in their communities. We have 3 overarching center goals for the Department of Youth Development. One is that youth will learn by developing a passion in their interests. So we have several project areas that they can choose from, ranging from photography, performing arts, animal science, lots of different things they can choose from. The second being that youth will lead by being innovators and positive change agents. Just this last weekend, we had nearly 20 youth leaders at a hotel in Baxter, and we did a lot of skill building and talked about 4-H and how we could be servants in our community. So we want to provide leadership opportunities for them. And then lastly, adults will create high quality, responsive learning environments. So again, we partner with those adults to teach them the positive development essentials and provide spaces for them to thrive in.
So in 2024, our local 4-H program reached 315 youth, including 99 new members, and that was spread across our 12 community clubs that are located around the county. Of those new members, 50 were first-generation youth, which means that no one in their family has ever been in 4-H before. This growth was made possible by the support of 94 dedicated adult volunteers whose commitment plays a vital role in our program's success. We also added 2 new clubs this year. One of them is led by 4-H alumni who wanted to give their children the same experience they had growing up in 4-H. I've been working closely with both new clubs, and they have built strong participation and they continue to grow.
Where are those 2 new clubs at?
One is in Center Township and one is in Cross Lake.
Okay.
Yep. So, we're intentional in our program design for them to gain confidence, strengthening their leadership and problem-solving skills. These valuable skills can be transferred into their everyday lives. The Crow Wing County 4-H ambassadors are a prime example of youth building and utilizing leadership skills. This past year, 17 ambassadors, grades 6 through 13, led meetings as club officers, mentored younger youth in a variety of project areas, led leadership activities, and served their community through service learning projects. Our ambassadors continue to play an important role in program growth. Their visibility and involvement across local clubs help younger members see leadership in action and build excitement about becoming ambassadors themselves in the future. Next up is our Cloverbud Project Club. This club is made up of youth in grades K through 2. We meet each month, October through April, leading themed lessons and projects. Cloverbuds have the opportunity to explore different project areas, helping them to discover their interests and learn more about themselves while they're building connections with other youth. After completing the project club, we encourage them to join a community club if they haven't already. Youth in 3rd grade are then invited to attend summer camp, where they can continue developing leadership skills and forming new connections. As they grow older, 4-H offers additional leadership opportunities, creating that pathway for youth to build and strengthen their leadership abilities over time.
All right, so last year we had over 26,000 youth across Minnesota showcase their learning, and that's at the local, regional, and state events. And so the reason we offer these showcase opportunities is that it completes the experiential learning cycle that 4-H is all about. So that's like doing the project, reflecting on that project, and then applying their skills either in that project area again to keep growing or in other areas of their life. It provides expert feedback, so we invite experts in that project area to be the judge in those areas. And so they have that guidance from those experts to continue their guided learning process. And then it builds the communication skills for those youth and those public speaking skills and just the practice and the confidence in that, in a safe place for them to showcase their learning. So at the local level, we've got county fairs. So if you walk into the Crow Wing County Fairgrounds, the big one with the 4-H clover on it, you'll see lots of different static projects or general projects. They use it interchangeably in that building. And then if you go into the animal buildings at the Crow Wing County Fair, you'll see clover. I think you have clovers on your cards, doll cards. Those are 4-H projects. Horse show too. We've got local. We've got a county dog show that they can choose to participate in. The horse show. There's a shooting sports program in Crow Wing County, so lots of different opportunities for them to showcase their learning locally. Then regionally, they can do Project Bowl, which is animal-based too, or they can do Northeast Livestock Show. We had over 300 exhibitors at the Northeast Livestock Show just in September. And then they can choose to advance to state, so state fair static projects or animal projects. We've got engineering design challenge. There's a state horse show they can participate in, state dog. So there's really anything, lots of different things for anyone they can choose to go further into.
So locally in Crow Wing County, we had 188 youth bring projects to the county fair this year. 109 youth brought livestock projects and 114 youth brought general projects. So there's a lot of crossover there. We also had strong representation at the state showcases. We had 49 youth attend the Minnesota State Fair, 16 youth compete at the horse show, 7 youth attend the dog show, and 35 youth attended the Northeast Livestock Show in Morrison County. Next, I want to highlight a youth named Jared. He is in our local program who has taken advantage of the many opportunities that 4-H has to offer. His interests include dairy goats, rabbits, and leadership. Jared serves as a county ambassador and has held the treasurer role in both the Baxter Sandpipers Club and the Federation. He is also a member of the Senior Rabbit Knowledge Bowl team and attends leadership events such as Blue and Yellow, which are designed for teens who want to take their leadership to the next level. He has put those skills into action as a summer camp counselor, helping younger youth grow and learn. Jared is just one example of the many Crow Wing County 4-H youth who demonstrates dedication to his own leadership development while inspiring others along the way.
I'd like to add too that he was at the retreat this last weekend and it was his 18th birthday on Saturday and he chose to spend it at 4-H. So that's how dedicated this young person is.
Yeah, he's amazing. And lastly, we wouldn't be able to run our program without all of our amazing volunteers. One of those volunteers, Gretchen Nelson, a 4-H alum and club leader of the Daggett Brook Club, says, "The reason others should become 4-H volunteers is because it's incredibly rewarding. To be able to coach and encourage youth as they gain their leadership skills is an experience like no other. Knowing that you are able to have an impact on youth that will serve them their entire lives is a humbling experience." And that is Gretchen on the far left there. So thank you. That wraps up our presentation. We're very grateful for your partnership. We appreciate your time today.
Thank you very much. It's interesting that you have 315 youth. I think that
Yes.
shows a huge impact in our county, so I
Yes.
appreciate it. But also the 94 volunteers that are bringing them along and helping them in their endeavors, so appreciate it very much.
Yes, thank you.
Any other comments? Commissioner Coring? He's watching you.
Mr. Chairman, no comments, thanks.
He's watching you from the side, just so you
Yeah.
know. All right, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Next up, we have the recreation update. Gary and Tom.
Good morning, Commissioners.
Good morning.
Today you're going to hear about some park trail updates and then maybe something not as fun, the enforcement efforts that Land Services has been doing. But before Tom starts taking you through the parks and maintenance stuff, I think it's important that we remind folks in the public that, you know, with the millions of dollars that we put into our parks, none of that was levy dollars. You know, the funding comes from the sale of timber and the sale of tax forfeited land. And a portion of that we have used to really create a really special county park system. And that has been supplemented with 18 or 14 boat launches and numerous trails for hunter hiker and ATV and cross-country ski trail. So it's pretty cool that we can do that without asking people to open their wallet to do those efforts. Well, thanks, and go ahead, Tom.
Gary.
Oh, yeah.
Gary, I would just piggyback on that just to point out, somebody might say, well, why don't you use that money to offset our taxes? Well, by statute, that money is restricted for certain uses. Can you just go into that just a little bit so that
Yes,
people understand that?
absolutely. So every dollar that's generated from timber and the sale of that tax forfeited land goes into an account, and that account has to be settled out on an annual basis, and it can only be used for specific items. So we do use the majority of it for operations, so for staff and equipment and things of that nature to keep our program going. But statute does not allow us to say, take the, let's say we may make $2 million on timber revenue this year and put that right into the general fund. We can't, we're not allowed to do that. So, yep.
Thank you.
Yes, good morning, Commissioners. So,
Good morning.
you know, in 2024, we were pretty pleased and happy and surprised to see that we broke 100,000 users that enter our parks. And so as somebody drives into the park, we have a car counter that's buried at the park. And so it's basically a metal detector. They drive past, it counts one, and then we're able to pull those data. We check them monthly. And so these numbers that you see for 2025 in front of you here are through the first part of November. So we're not quite done with the year. We're hoping that we stretch that number a little bit more. But for 2025, we were at almost 108,000, which is a 6% increase over 2024. So it just goes to show that people are continuing to use our parks. Yes, Commissioner.
Question. It counts them going in, does it count them going out also?
Yes, it does.
So
Yep.
you divide that in half, and that's your real number then?
Yep, correct.
Okay.
Yep, yes, we do. Yep, we have to divide that in half. We also have some infrared counters. As somebody walks by, it breaks a beam, and that counts people as well. So that way we have those true numbers of how many people are going into the parks and maybe accessing unique things. So it's just really cool to see that people are continuing to find our parks, use our parks. It's a great resource that we have, and you know, Gary talked about the money we put into them. They're being well used. You know, the fire tower continues to be the most popular place because of the tower and the fall colors. If anybody has the opportunity to go there during the fall time, it's hard to find a parking spot. We've, you know, over the years since we acquired the tower in 2018-19, we've expanded that parking lot 3 times, and it continues to just be a very popular place. Moving on into some of our other trails, we also have counters buried at our OHV trails. These are our Class 1, Class 2 ATV trails, as well as our OHM, our off-highway motorcycle trails. So for 2025, we're almost at 100,000. We continue to see increases there. ATVs continue to be very popular here in the county. We have some of the busiest trails in the state here locally with some of the trails up in Emily. We saw, you know, roughly 21,000 on our Emily Blind Lake Trail alone. People just driving by and enjoying our trails and the resources that we have here in the county. And then we also have 17 hunter, hiker, or ski trails.
Before you go
Yes.
on from that, the ATV trails, is there a season that they can ride those on?
Yes, good question. So typical season is anywhere from that May 1st to 15th. It starts depending on how much snow and how much frost we've had. We wait to make sure those trails are good and safe and able to be ridden. And then the OHV season closes November 1st per DNR rules. And so that's to allow for people to get out and hunt and use the tax forfeited land and public land in other ways. Yep. So those counters have been pulled for the year, so that 96,000 number is what we're going to see for 2025, but still a pretty impressive number. It's a lot of machines traveling the trails and buying gas and hamburgers. So
Right.
yeah, so for our excuse me, I should back up just one second. The Big Island, I know that was a question last year of trying to get those numbers reported. For 2025, I did reach out to the Raleigh Johnson Group, and they had 291 campers and 307 people just using the island as day use only. So those numbers are pretty steady. They don't show up well here on the map when you're talking about, you know, 300 people versus 50,000 at the fire tower, but still an important park that we have in the Whitefish chain. For those non-motorized trails, we have, like I said, about 17 We got a couple that are ski trails in the wintertime, and then hunter hiker trails in the summer, so that ends up being about 17 trails. Of those 17, 6 are well situated to have a car counter on them, and so we did see a small decrease this year, but still, almost 20,000 users getting out using those trails for whether it's horseback riding, birding, hunting, enjoying nature. These are the trails that we go out and we mow twice a year. We hit them once in June and then once in September, trying to help people get out and enjoy them so they're not walking through waist tall grass when it's wet, or hunters, whatever the like may be.
Why was the Poor Farm so high in '22?
That's a good question. I don't know if I have an answer for that. We didn't collect anything in 23 and 24 because somebody stole the counter. It happens. We tried again this year. We did get some numbers. It's hard to say why that number is so high.
Interesting. Yeah, I suppose. Sheriff, could you address that?
Tom, do we have any the counters at the landings that we manage? We manage some landings. Is there counters at those?
These counters that we're using today used to be at the landings for AIS work,
Okay.
but we repurposed them to collect the data on the trails, and so we don't have any
You don't
counters.
have any to say how much are the landings being used at this time?
No,
Is that
no, we
something
don't.
you're looking into?
Not at this time. No.
So we don't know what landings are used more than other landings unless we have AIS people there that are counting the people coming through.
Yeah, we know, someone anecdotally just by, the type of access and where it's at, which ones get used more. Those that get used more have upgraded facilities. You look at, like Jones Bay, it has a bathroom. The whole entire thing is paved. It has 2 nice docks. That's a very well-used type access. You've got other accesses that are carry-in only, so they're meant for a small canoe or maybe somebody that's got a duck boat, those types of things, those smaller, lakes that are just, they don't have as much fish in them.
Little Emily, that's a carry-in only, right, for if somebody wants a kayak on that lake, then they carry it in.
Yep, so the county maintains a canoe access on that. There is a private launch through the resort if somebody wanted to launch a boat,
Okay.
but that's not something we control.
Right, okay, thank you.
Thank you. So moving on into just wanted to highlight some of the work that staff has been doing in 2025. The first one here is Milford. We've been working on a couple parks this year, and so the trail on the right, as you see there, all the white lines are existing trails that we've built from 2017 until today, basically. We've done a couple different iterations of park expansions, and now we're to the largest park expansion that we've done to date, and that's an additional 2.2 miles of trail. As you see on the left there, crews are actually out there actively working on building boardwalks on that southern piece of trail to get that open to the public. It's going to be a nice extension to the park. It's going to offer a more scenic and nature type trails. When you go out there today, we've got some really good trails that get to some really neat spots. We've got a lot of interpretive information, but one thing we heard is that people want to get out and spend more time. They want to get away from the masses of the public, the people that are out there. So now they have a nice long trail loop that we're hoping to finish in 2026. That'll connect from the existing trails all the way around and then back to the existing trails again, so you can park your car, start at one point, walk all the way back. You don't have to turn around and come back, and you can experience some of the lake. That was made possible. We acquired a small piece of property here in 2022, I believe it was, on the northeast side of the lake, and so now the county owns all the way around Milford Lake, which is it's pretty neat. Okay. We also did some expansions at South Long Lake, and so we built approximately 700 feet of new trails, and then we also redid the existing trails. You can see the picture on the right there. Some of the trails were kind of washing out and just got heavy. They were heavily used, and so they needed to be updated a little bit. Made them a little bit more ADA compliant, so that way people can actually get out and enjoy the park. The top left there is a picture of the boardwalk that we had to build, to get across one of the small wetlands. And then we also put up some new interpretive signs that talk about, different county things that we have. So like different trees within the county and, why wetlands are important and those types of things to help educate the public and spend some time. And then for 2026, we also intend to install a playground similar to what's at Little Emily. So some pretty cool improvements to that park. If you haven't been able to check them out, it's looking really good. Also for 2025, if you remember, we had a cooperative agreement with the DNR to extend the fishing pier at Little Emily. We actually put a 20-foot extension on Little Emily that was paid for by the DNR. That went pretty well. And then, of course, as always, we did have some vandalism at the parks. Thankfully, this year it wasn't excessive, but we have seen some continued people that will shoot our signs. And we did have one case at the fire tower where somebody backed into the fence. It was just an accident, but we got that fixed. And then we have seen some graffiti up in the tower again. And so staff are making sure they climb that tower fairly routinely to ensure that type of stuff is being identified and cleaned up. We have been working with both the Sheriff's Office and Pequot Police Department to try to catch some of these people. We've been successful a few times, and I know the police chief up in Pequot has chewed a few people out for us, so it's been good. Just unfortunate that we continue to see some vandalism, but not as much as we've seen in the past.
Do all the parks have some type of a camera system? Now I know I was out at, my wife and I were out at the Milford Mine one and doing a walk around, and she just couldn't believe how nice the trails were, but I could see there was a camera up there. And is that just how does that get fed back, that information come back? Do we see that live? Do we see it, how does that work?
Yep, I don't want to give away too many secrets, but it's a solar camera that we have access through an app. And so if we're not necessarily sitting on our computers watching it, but if we see something and we want to look into it, we can go back into that feed and try to catch somebody. They are solar cameras, and so they don't do the best at night. So when it's real dark out, we have troubles. But if somebody's doing something during the day, we'll usually be able to catch them, and then we forward that stuff onto the sheriff's office or the local PD. And so we've done all these nice improvements. We've built all these nice parks. We also need to maintain them. And so this year we did purchase a small box blade. You can see up on you can't see that pointer very well, but up on the left-hand side here, it's a little box drag that the technicians can pull behind an ATV. And then this is the product here on the bottom left. As time goes, we get some small washouts or real erosion or just people walking and moving dirt. We like to make sure those trails have a nice crown and they're nice and smooth and level. So that was a small purchase, but it's made a big impact. And then we also did some improvements at the fire tower. You can see this spring we got some really heavy rains here in the center picture, and it caused some erosion that just was unsafe for people. And so we spent some time with the contractor to install some stormwater basins and diversions, so that way we can eliminate that problem. And then now with the box drag, we can continue to maintain those nicely and keep them to a standard that the public have come to expect at our parks. This is one of those don't knock it till you try it kind of things. So we build these trails and they get kind of remote sometimes. There's lots of trees and there's lots of leaves. As the leaves fall in the fall, we like to remove them. They start to decompose in the trail. They get real wet. They get real thick. People just don't like walking through them. And so the staff came up with what I think is a pretty innovative idea. It's a trial run for this year, and it worked. You can see on the left, the technicians take a leaf blower with some ducting, and they able to blow the leaves off the trail. And so they make 2 passes. It really saves us a ton of time versus having to walk a trail. This is at Little Emily. 3 miles of trails pretty much takes us all day with a leaf blower to walk. Now they're doing this in an hour or 2. We're going to make some improvements to that ductwork, make it look a little nicer with some PVC next year. But we didn't want to spend a bunch of money. We've got maybe $40 invested there. And we also don't want to, if you've ever seen like commercial people that have like a Billy Goat leaf blower, we don't want to blow all our granite off the trail. So this is a good solution where we can control the amount of pressure we're putting on those trails and blowing those leaves off. So don't knock it till you try it. It's working well.
keep us updated on that, will you?
Well,
Yes, sir.
and my wife will want me to make one for her riding lawnmower. I can see that right now.
Yes.
So
Yep.
I'll be in the shop next year.
Also, with maintenance, we've got a lot of bridges and boardwalks. The one on the bottom right there is Little Emily again. Staff are just getting out, making sure that we're staining those, keeping them looking nice, making sure that they last for a long time. We've invested a lot of money in the trails. We want to make sure that we're doing a good job. And then the picture on the left there is the entrance to Milford. We did spend some of that tax forfeit money, like Gary mentioned, to add some gravel to the road there, so that way it's not so washboardy. We can do a better job maintaining and grading that. So just small improvements that really go a long way to keeping what we have looking really nice. And then once a month, the technicians go out and they actually close each park for half a morning, and they treat for mosquitoes and for flies. So up on the right there, that's a mosquito mister that we use. We put it in the back of our side-by-side, and so they go out and they make a couple passes and they're blowing kind of like Mosquito Squad or similar company would do, and making sure that our parks are enjoyable for people. They're not getting overrun by mosquitoes and flies. The thing is that they're still pretty remote, so we get some control, but the mosquitoes and flies do come back. But once a month, we're going out around the first of the month and treating our trails. And then the bottom picture just represents that, we build these trails and we want to make sure that they stay weed-free. And so while their staff are out there spraying for mosquitoes, they're out there treating weeds, removing those, so that way we keep them looking nice. Otherwise, Mother Nature would do her thing and reclaim those trails very quickly if we didn't do some work to keep them looking nice. Any questions on 2025 park maintenance? If not,
I can just say thank you very much for the crew and what you guys do out there. We did enhance the number of parks over the course of at least my tenure here, and I think that the maintenance of it has been outstanding. But and the expansion has been amazing, and that's reflected in the number of people that visit our parks. So they're well-placed, and it's attracting people. So, but you guys are doing a great job of maintaining it and keeping it up, so thank you very much.
yeah, and of course, we appreciate, your guidance and vision and trust for us to do that work. And I'd be remiss if I didn't, pass that thanks along to the technicians. They're the ones out there day to day, cleaning the bathrooms and spraying the weeds and making sure the garbages are empty. They're the ones that are out there doing the hard work, so kudos to them.
Any other remarks, questions?
Okay, remarks? I'm kind of involved a little bit with pollinators and stuff like that, and the product you're using for the mosquitoes, how does that affect the bees and that type? Is it the same product that would affect them also?
Yes, it would, yep.
Okay.
It is a pesticide. It's definitely not selective for individual types
Right.
of animals. What we're treating is a very small portion
Okay.
of our landscapes in general. We have, quite a few miles of trails at our parks, but it's relatively a small piece of our land base.
I know on the Milford Mine, I remember sending you a picture of a plant that my wife looked at and says, good, and I know it's some native species that's out there, so, those are the other things we kind of think about. That's some of the stuff that's in our area that you normally don't find in parks, is some of that native species and stuff, and I wouldn't want to herbicide too much stuff and make it just a monoculture out there of just green grass, so.
Yeah, yep, we're not spraying any herbicide in the woods. I should say, we do treat some buckthorn at our parks.
Right.
Some very selective things, but we're not just broadcasting herbicide everywhere. It's very selective to on the trail, just to make sure those trails stay weed-free. Yeah, we don't want to lose any of our native vegetation and the variety that's out there. Our goal isn't to have lawns out there. We want it to be as natural as possible.
The other thing is since we have so many parks now, do you have a budget? Do you figure what your budget's going to be for just the maintenance of the park? I mean, because we've added, trails and all that stuff is taking more maintenance. And we know that through the revenue that comes in from the timber, that's one thing, but the revenue that comes in through the land sales and some of the other stuff is kind of tenuous. Are we set to make sure we can maintain those parks throughout without having to look in other sources of revenue?
Yes, I think we are in a good position to, the parks we have currently, even with some potential future enhancements in 27, maybe 28, I think almost, I can't guarantee anything, but for a long time out, we don't see any levy dollars needed to maintain these parks.
Okay. Thank you.
All right, let's get on to the part that probably isn't so,
Well, I got a couple more
Oh.
for under recreation.
okay,
Yeah.
sorry.
You just gotta park it for a minute.
Okay. Thanks, Gary.
So for 2026, we do have some plans to make some additional improvements at our parks. One of those improvements is a couple fishing piers. And so there's a proposed pier at South Long Lake. So if you look at the map there, you can kind of see the one. It's there's already a small fishing pier right at the confluence of the lake and the Nokasippi River there. We also plan to add another, I think it's about 164-foot long pier that does jet out in the lake to provide more fishing opportunities for people. I like to bring my daughter here, and it's quite busy. It's hard to find a place to fish. So this will be a good enhancement for this park for 2026, along with the playground. It's going to be looking really good.
You don't have a personal agenda in this.
No, sir. All for the betterment of the taxpayers of Crow Wing County. I think that fishing pier was actually Gary's idea, so. We also have a proposal to put one on Papoose Lake. This is a little bit shorter one. I think this is 60, 70 feet long. Right in that red circle there on the left map, we do have a fishing pier on Little Emily. But one thing that we've seen as we've started to open the park and maintain the park is people are walking to Papoose with fishing poles. And so they're trying to fish off a shore, trying to look for additional opportunities to fish. Papoose Lake is once again surrounded by public land, and so there's no development on the lake. It's just a really nice, small little body of water, and rumor has it there's some crappies in there. Can't divulge where, but. And then we do plan on putting another 40-foot extension on the pier on Little Emily Lake to continue to push that out, give people a better opportunity to fish and use our parks. And then for 2026 as well, just a couple enhancements. We're going to put potentially 2 new pavilions out on some scenic overlooks. They're hopefully in strategic locations where people will need a rest anyways from walking along the trails. Both of these are really good overlooks. The one on the east side there, or the right side, overlooks Milford. You can kind of see some of the existing park infrastructure. That'll be really neat. These are the same types of pavilions that you would see at our parks. They've got the granite surface, a couple picnic tables. They're about 16 by 20 feet in length. And the other one will overlook Island Lake. And then we'll also be adding some more granite to the trails. And so when we first proposed this expansion, we were trying to be cost effective and work in the budget we had. And so we didn't have granite for those trails. And now we're looking at making sure those trails look just as good as the rest of our trails. And then there's quite a few boardwalks that are out at the park, and we plan to make sure we stain those in 2026. That way we keep those looking nice. I know Commissioner Lubke has mentioned a few boards on the existing boardwalk that are looking a little tough. We're going to get those replaced and then make sure we get those stained, that nice floating boardwalk that we have, making sure that continues to look nice and doesn't turn gray, and just keep our parks looking as good as they always have. So that's all I have, unless there is questions.
Tom, are the parks closed at any point in time during the year? Are they open year-round? When can people visit the parks?
The parks are open year-round. They're open sunrise to sunset. Yep, and they're free. We don't charge anything for people to come and use them.
Very good.
Thank you.
When Chris is coming up on the enforcement stuff, I just wanted to mention when he talks about this, the thing that I've learned in my tenure is we do a lot of stuff in land services, of course, but one of the more difficult things is trying to have somebody get compliance without having a hammer. And the stories you'll hear from Nicolette and Chris, it is, you would think maybe setting value or talking taxes are the toughest thing, but this enforcement task is quite difficult because a lot of times folks either don't have the means to clean up things for themselves, or it's their treasures and they maybe don't agree that it's making the environmental impact that we believe it is, and it's a tough gig. Oh, thanks for that.
Thank you very much. Nicolette and Chris, welcome.
Good morning. We just wanted to take a few minutes this morning and provide an update on some of our enforcement numbers and you know, what we've been up to this year as far as getting compliance. Just brought Nicolette with me. She's been with the county about 6.5 years. She started in our customer service team and then moved up into the role of being an environmental service specialist, and she held that for about 5 years. And then about a year ago, she was promoted to be a senior environmental service specialist. And so she really works with me on helping to coordinate some of our more field activities and back with the other environmental service specialists, but her real primary goal is to help coordinate the Planning Commission Board of Adjustment items. And so I just wanted to invite her up today and kind of just walk through, have her share some of her thoughts. We've got some examples of some enforcements that will show you that she worked on herself that I thought she'd like to maybe share those stories and how they were able to work out. So just going to give you a real quick rundown on just more of, from an enforcement standpoint, policy, how we really do the process. As Gary mentioned, I think, you know, anytime you have rules, you have to have enforcement. It's just part of the gig. It's one of the more challenging things that we do, and I think when we get new staff that come onto the team, the enforcement piece is usually the part that is kind of where they have to decide if they like working as an environmental service specialist. It's fun to permit a house up on Whitefish, but it's not a lot of fun to go down to Daggett Township and tell somebody they got to get rid of 75 cars on their property. It's not really always a fun conversation. But just to give you just a couple of things, so that we have a multiple list of items that we're responsible to enforce. So we do the land use ordinance, solid waste ordinance, short-term rental ordinance, Wetland Conservation Act, and then we also work in collaboration with public health nuisances with the Community Services Office. And so again, to go back to what is the overall fundamental goal of enforcement is to get voluntary compliance. So we're not out driving around looking for problems. We're not they come find us. I will say that if an environmental service specialist is out working in their area and they're doing their field work and they drive by a house, also they notice there's a garage being built and they said, I didn't permit a garage there. We'll stop in and have that conversation and get those things, but we're not out driving around looking for any of these junk nuisance violations. Those are typically, we respond to those on a complaint basis. And so when we get a complaint, one of the first things people need to do is the person making the complaint, we need to know who you are. So we need your name, we need your phone number, and then you need to tell us exactly where this complaint is located. If you're not willing to give us your name and a phone number so we can follow back and that, we're just not going to take the complaint. We need that information so that we can ask questions and get more information. But we also will get calls. Oh, I was over on Rush Lake today, and I'm pretty sure somebody's building a permit on the south side. Where? Well, on the side. Okay, so can you go back? We'll instruct them, you need to go back, we need an address. Tell us exactly where it's at, because we have a limited amount of time, and just trying to search and find some of these violations can be very problematic. So that's kind of, and when people call, I mean, it's the simple what, when, where, why, how, who, give us all as much information as you can so that we have some information. There are certain violations, depending on what comes in, will drive how quick we respond. So if somebody calls in today and says, I think my neighbor's septic system is surfacing and there's sewage on the ground, we're gonna be out there today, no question about it. They'll have a 24-hour time frame to resolve that issue, to either cap that tank off and then treat it as a holding tank until they can get the issue resolved. But if we have a situation where we get a call once in a while, somebody's got a backhoe in the lake, we're going out right now because we got to see what is going on. But if it's typically the activity has occurred and the goal that we have, or the policy says that we want the environmental service specialist out to that property within 5 business days. Just to go out and just view the property. And, when we go out to a property, we're being very cognizant of private property and making sure that we don't have the ability to just start snooping around and peeking in people's windows of garages and that sort of thing. And so, we go to somebody's house and we knock on the front door. We always want to talk to people. We're not a big believer in writing letters. That's a last resort. We always want to talk to people. And so when we go out and we always knock on the door, and if there's nobody there, we kind of walk around the backyard to see if we can are there. We do whatever we can to try to get a hold of somebody. We always leave a card when we're there so that people know who we are and what our purpose was. And then after they've been to the site, and within a couple days, we want the ESS to be able to have reached out to try to find a phone number, whatever way we can try to get that contact information. And if after that point we can't get a hold, then we'll send them a letter. But we get a lot more work done when we talk to people in person or by a phone call versus sending letters out. It's just a much more productive when you do that. One of the things that as Gary mentioned, with enforcements being challenging, there are situations where the people don't want us on their property and they're not happy to see us. And so we've got a really great relationship with the sheriff, with Sheriff Klang and his team to make sure that if we feel like we're walking into a situation where it's dangerous, we're gonna be escorted out there by a deputy. I've worked real close with a good relationship with Jessica over at Dispatch. And so if we're gonna go out to a site that we've got some questions on, we'll call, they've asked us to call the day of. Because, if we asked them a week ago and things were great, a lot of things can happen in a week. And so we talked to them the day of, they let us know if there's been any issues out there, if there's anything we need to be aware of. This is one example I can give is we had staff go out to a site, and then I had talked with one of the deputies, and they go, "Oh, we wouldn't go out there unless we had 2 deputies." And we had one of our ESS going out. So that really got my mind thinking, we got this, safety is paramount. We need to make sure that we're not putting staff in a position where they're gonna, run into a nasty situation with somebody who could, might try to harm them or hurt them. We want everybody to come home every night after work. So there are times when we're in a situation where the operation is active and we need to go issue a cease and desist order. And we work with the county attorney's office on that to stop that activity until they can get resolution as far as what it takes to get compliance. So what are some of the options that folks have when they're out of compliance is they can just apply for a permit. We don't, fine people. We just want compliance. We just want to work with people to get things figured out and back into compliance. Maybe they have to move a structure or remove a structure because it's not in the right location. Sometimes they can apply for a variance if they want to see if they can keep it, or sometimes they need a conditional use permit depending on the activity. So our goal is to help them find solutions to gain compliance with the ordinance. Unfortunately, when we're dealing with like the solid waste ordinance and that, you have one option. You gotta remove the junk off the property. When we work through the Wetland Conservation Act, there's different ways of getting compliance. There's exemptions, there's replacement plans, there's just removal of the fill. We'll have a couple examples of that to show you today. And then, again, as I mentioned, we're really looking for voluntary compliance. And so, for example, I'm just really reading from a policy we have in place on how we handle this. So this is really clear, I think, for staff as the expectations. But if somebody has, let's say they've had a wetland impact where they filled a wetland they shouldn't have, they have a 30-day window to remove that. If somebody has a septic system that is failing, it's not protecting groundwater for whatever reason, they have a 10-month window to upgrade that. If we have the system, like I said, where it's surfacing on the ground, you have a 24-hour window to resolve that issue and get that taken care of. If somebody's got junk or solid waste on their property, they got a 30-day window. Let's say they need to get a permit, we'll give them 2 weeks. We'll also give extensions if people are working towards it. If we go out to a property and they had 50 junk cars today and we go back out in a month, they got 40. Okay, let's just, and the most important part about working in enforcement is making sure that the people are in control as much as they can. And so when we're working with them, we're out there saying, this is what needs to happen. When can you have, what time frame can you do that in? Well, I could probably do it by the end of the month. Well, great. Yeah. It puts them in control of the situation where they don't feel like they're being boxed into a corner. We've had some people say, well, I could do it in 3 years. And we're like, well, that might not be quite fast enough for us. So then we'll work with them a little bit on setting a more timely time frame for that. But it's really, we want to, most of the time when we leave these properties, I think you'd be surprised, people say thanks. that was, that went better than I thought it would. And we're just there to get that compliance in place and work with them. So, so that's kind of just the process of how we go through the enforcement. Up on the screen, just to give you some numbers of things that, what we've looked at so far this year. So we've, for 2025, we've had 227 documented complaints, and we've been able to resolve 176 of those. So we're at a 77% closure rate. Our goal as a department is 75%. And so this is for usually this time of year, it's probably closer to the 60s in previous years. So I'm really pleased with the staff and how well they've done putting all this together and really getting out and working on these issues that we've got with the ordinance. So if you so just for example, I'll point out a couple I think that were important. So we had 63 failing compliance inspections. So that would be somebody had an inspection because they needed a permit or a property transfer and the system didn't pass. There'd be a 10-month window to upgrade those. And if you look so far this year, we've been able to upgrade a total of about half of those systems, just a little under half, 20 of those systems have been upgraded. I think one of the big things that we do as a county is making sure that people have compliant septic systems. I think that's one of the most important things that we do. We had some land use ordinance violations that would resolve, I didn't get a permit for a certain activity, or, maybe, typically it's didn't get a permit, working with people to get permits and that. We had 47 short-term rental violations, this year. The majority of those are for folks who just didn't get a license. And so we work with them to get a license. We had 14 complaints about, hey, they're too loud, this. We had a situation where we had sent out a couple of letters with strike one saying you got 3 strikes and you're done with your rental. We only had 2 issues where we had to send those letters out. So I think it's an example of people showing that they're getting
And this
work
is the
done.
first year that I think the Cross Lake took over their own in their jurisdiction.
Correct, that'd be correct.
And I think they had, last time I checked, they had like 111, I'm trying to remember the number, but it was about 111 that they have in their own jurisdiction that we don't have anymore, plus whatever's been added onto that.
Right, yeah.
And
Yeah,
have we had many new ones in our area come in the area that we take care of?
ones, oh, absolutely. There's always new ones coming in. There's new ones coming in, there's ones not getting a license anymore. It's a very fluid, very dynamic coming.
The other thing you have here, failing compliance inspections, and it opened in '25. Was there some that came over from '24? Because some of
We
those.
did have a rollover. Yep, we did have, we had probably about half that number roll over from '24.
Okay.
And we're down to, I believe, 7 of those we're still working on. And frankly, they're gonna go to the county attorney's office because we're not getting anywhere with them voluntarily. So we're working on that. So, and then just to give you an idea, we sent, this year, we were able to send over some cases to the county attorney's office. And so they've been really, really helpful, because sometimes a letter from the county attorney tends to maybe get people more motivated than maybe a letter from land services. So just a big thank you to the county attorney's office and Stephanie and her willingness to help us resolve these cases. So she, like, for example, they helped us resolve 39 cases in 2024. We've done 35 of them so far this year. A lot of them have just been, sometimes when property transfers, they don't get the compliance inspection, and then we send them a letter that says, get your septic inspected, and they just kind of ignore it. So that's one that's been helpful for us. Short-term rental, when a lot of folks just don't want to get their license. So we work with those. They've been helpful with that. And then getting some septic upgrades when we know we have a failing septic, we got a notice of non-compliance, and they just don't want to upgrade their system. And so it's been a great relationship with the county attorney's office. I appreciate all the time and effort that goes into that. So we're going to go into just some examples quick of just to show you some of the cleanups that have happened. Look at that. So this would be in District 4 with Commissioner Franzine. This is off Soda Road. You can just see the assorted junk that we had out there. And then this is what it was done when it was cleaned up. And I think it's important for folks to know that when we do cleanups, it doesn't mean everything on the property is going to be removed. It's going to be what is in violation of the ordinance. Sometimes, folks might not like that there's these different sheds and that on there. that's not a non-compliant issue. And so we're really focusing on what does the ordinance require and what is that people can still keep and remain on the property.
And the cost of doing those are put onto the,
So everything that you see today is voluntary. We
Oh,
did
it's
not,
voluntary,
this is all
okay.
voluntary cleanups where staff worked with folks and they were motivated to voluntarily clean up and not have to go through the mandated
condemning
cleanup
or whatever
process.
we do, that we go out there and clean it up and then put it on their taxes.
We can, and we would always come back to the county board and you guys would always authorize us to go
Okay.
in and do those cleanups. But I'm gonna pass this over to Nicolette and she's gonna share, these are some files that she worked on herself, so I wanted her to kind of share her story about it.
Just as Nicolette's getting ready, just one thing on those, the ones that you would assess back to the property. Typically, when those notices go out, it gives them the opportunity to voluntarily clean it up before it gets to that assessment piece. So you might see a notice that comes from public health or from the enforcement, and actually, they're now becoming these joint assessment notices, if you've noticed on the last few that you might have seen, where it's showing that it's both a solid waste enforcement and a public health enforcement piece that is being addressed. They're given that opportunity to clean that up voluntarily before it gets to the point where it would be assessed back onto their property when we would go out and clean it. If we actually are doing the effort, if we are coordinating with the contractor and saying that it needs to be cleaned up and we're scheduling someone to come out and do it, that's when it's going to get assessed back to the property.
Correct, and it's important to know when you're dealing with solid waste, or with the public health nuisance, there's a very tight timeline as far as, and that's why these letters go out. Doesn't always mean we're gonna do the cleanup, but it puts folks on notice that if they don't do the cleanup, this is what the next steps would be potentially to require a mandatory cleanup, which we don't wanna avoid at all costs, because it's much more cost-effective if folks can clean up their own property versus us going in and doing it on their behalf, so. But why don't you go ahead and explain some of these projects?
Okay, good morning, Commissioners.
Good morning. Good morning.
This enforcement is in District 4, and this is off of County Road 3, just east of Clow Stamping on Lake Edward. And this is a side that has a wetland fringe along the lake, and there was a homemade dock through the wetland, and this was a joint effort with the DNR, the Soil and Water Conservation District, and Land Services. And so this is a picture of before, and here's a really good aerial of the restoration of before and after. They removed all of the pallets and the asphalt shingles out of the wetland, and the wetland fill that was also placed. So it was very successful.
Was that volunteer, or did that, no,
Voluntary.
That was also voluntary.
It's
Really?
everything we talk about today is voluntary.
Oh,
Yep.
okay.
Yep.
Once they work with us, we might have gave 2 extensions for that one, but he completed it on his own.
Wonder
This
why he
enforcement.
thought he should dump all that stuff out there to begin with.
You want to get the lake.
He was trying to get access to the lake, and that was what he had available to him to try to get out there so he could get across the wetland. That was in
Now he has
his,
no access to the lake?
he could, there's always access availability, so it would require a boardwalk. If you want to cross those, a riparian wetland.
He probably doesn't have the money for that. It's
That's why he
expensive.
did what he did, and so sometimes, depending on the season and how rainy and wet it gets, sometimes it's a dry wetland, sometimes it's wet, so,
Okay.
This enforcement is in District 1 and Garrison Township on Kenny Lake on Loon Lane. And this one we just recently closed. This one opened in 2020, actually, the beginning of 2020. And it was at first difficult to get a hold of the landowners, but once we did, they worked very quickly on getting things cleaned up. And this is what it looks like now. So vehicles were all licensed, collector plates were placed, and junk successfully cleaned up, so.
And that's another piece I'd like to remind, is that when we are dealing with junk vehicles, we have a limit of 2 unlicensed vehicles in the shoreline district, and then once you get the non-shoreline, you can have basically 2 unlicensed cars, and then 1 for every acre up to 10, so you could have a potential for 10. So when we work with somebody who might have some cars, it doesn't mean that they have to remove them, they have to prove to us that they're licensed and operable. And if they're licensed and operable, there's no limit to the number of vehicles they can have on the property, so.
This violation was a wetland violation where there was unpermitted fill. And this property is in the Shoreland District, which at this time was only allowed 400 square feet of fill with an over-the-counter permit. The fill amounts were extensive beyond that. And this was also another joint enforcement with the DNR and the Soil and Water Conservation District and Land Services. All three of us worked together on what needed to be done with the landowner, and they were very compliant as far as removing the wetland fill and doing what was recommended by the Soil and Water Conservation for restoration. This is a photo of what that restoration looks like.
Wow.
So another success.
And you say voluntarily, but I'm sure it's not real voluntarily sometimes.
Voluntary means they chose to do it themselves. Mandatory is that they were ordered to either by the county board through a cleanup or by a judge if they're found guilty of an offense. So, yeah. Is this Goddard?
Yes. Yep. So this one is in District 2 and Jenkins Township, Pine Knoll Circle on Lower Whitefish Lake. And
My district, man.
yeah, it was quite extensive throughout the entire property, but we worked with the landowners and it was completely cleaned up. So, and I mean, within their own set time frame. So this was a huge success for us.
So the next one again is up in District 2. This one is again in Commissioner Lupke's area. This is an ideal off of County Road 16. Again, just the pictures could be one and the same. I mean, they're all very common when you start looking at these as far as what's there. And then when you're done, you have a property that's cleaned up and looking pretty good. So another good example of voluntary compliance. Where they clean it up on their own. This one is over in Commissioner Lee's district. This would be over on Deerwood off of Rice Lake Road. Hard to tell, but that's a pile of tires. That's a big pile of tires. And so we got the complaint on that, and as we came out to start working with the folks, it turned out that they were already in the process of removing it. I think they had heard that maybe, that we were coming on there, that had been reported as a complaint. And so if you look at the next picture, you can kind of see this has been where the tires would have been. So all those were cleaned up and resolved and taken care of. Again, no cost out of the county's pocket to do that. Again, this is up in District 5. This is up in Commissioner Lee's area. This is in Fairfield Township. This is County Road 36. It's near Rogers Lake. And you just had somebody who frankly didn't have garbage service. And so they just tossed it out in the front yard. And so staff worked with this person, took a few months to get them to voluntarily clean it up. And this is what you've got today. So, it was a really good, I think, example of just working with folks, and they were able to work within their time frame and setting it on their own, and getting it cleaned up. I do want to point out that there was nothing from District 3, and that is, but we do get some calls. Commissioner Barrows, just wanted you to know that, and we work closely with both Baxter and Brainerd to report any sort of issues that they have, and they've been really good about taking that information and going out and getting that resolution in place. So just wanted to kind of go over the policy. How do we do the enforcements? Then just some examples of what's happening in your different, in your district, so you could see just some of the cleanups, and hoping that, what I hope people hear is that we do have some requirements that they have to follow. And when we come out, we're there to help figure out a solution to the problem. And so we're there to be a solution and to be a helper. So, but we really hope that if we didn't have any enforcements, that would be perfect, but there always will be. And I just want to say a couple things. One, Anthony Moberg in the office did a great job putting together this PowerPoint today and the pictures and getting all this information. He's done a really good job of getting us a really good spreadsheet up on SharePoint so we can document and track and know where we're going, able to take notes. But it's also just the environmental service specialists who are the ones that are going out day in, day out and working with these folks and really helping them make the right choice and giving them that guidance on how to gain compliance. And it's not easy. You know, when you go on somebody's property, you've got about 2 minutes to establish a relationship. And they've done a really good job at doing that, and people have trusted them. And unfortunately, we have some where we haven't gained compliance, and we're working closely with the county attorney's office to assist us with those. So just want to say thank you to the board for your support and for sticking with us on some ways. I know some ways you get the calls first, they come to us, or you'll get a call after, you know, the complaint has come on and our team has gone out to work with them. And so really appreciate the support that the board has given to us in this enforcement, because this is probably one of the more touchy subjects, I think, that we deal with from a department standpoint.
I appreciate you pointing out the Brainerd Baxter, which sounds or looks like there's no issues. I do get calls on that, so those issues do exist.
Yes, they do.
Within
Absolutely.
the borders of those two cities also. How do you look at, for instance, this last slide here, you said they don't potentially have garbage collection. So what's the future look like for this property? Will they be just...
Right. Well, and so we can't, you know, we encourage them to get that. I think what they turned out of this situation was they're being a self-hauler. They're going to put the garbage in the bags and they're going to self-haul over to the Ideal transfer station, probably would be where they're going to go. But unfortunately, we have repeat offenders. And so we've had to clean up a few properties across the county a couple different times, and there might be another cleanup coming to a property that we're all familiar with up in First Assessment. We got another complaint, and I think Commissioner Franzine knows who I'm talking about, and so we may be required to go back in and do another cleanup on that property as well. So we do have repeat offenders, unfortunately.
Okay.
And one of the things I do appreciate, I think that one that was up in District 2 there, you made me aware of it, I think, ahead of time.
Right.
You know, before anything happened, and I think that's really important, because we get the call, or we'll maybe know of something more to do with that.
Yeah, when we do get those complaints, I mean, there are some complaints that, hey, I didn't get a permit for a deck. Those are pretty easy ones, but the ones that are a little more sticky, a little more tricky, we're gonna definitely reach out to the commissioner to make sure you're aware of what's going on, because you're gonna get the call.
Yeah,
And
we get the call.
It's nice, I think it's helpful to have that information on the front end, so that when they do call, you can say, oh, I did talk with Land Services, and kind of takes the wind out of their sails sometimes when they have that, because there's always a story to tell, and there's always three sides of the story: my side, your side, and the truth. So we got to figure out what that is, right? So.
Well, thank you to your team for all the efforts. There's always a rub there, and you guys seem to manage that very well, and appreciate that. I think we get minimal calls if I look at what the potential is out there, because of the efforts that are made over at your office there. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair, is that it for the day?
No, we have one more, Commissioner. Jordan Larson's going to come up on unpaved roads.
Okay. I have something on the end too,
Okay.
if you could just make a note of that.
Sure.
I'd like to say something.
Good morning.
Good morning. So, my name's Jordan Larson, and I'm going to give you an update on the unpaved road study that the county's been working on for the last 6 to 8 months. So, right now the county maintains 42 miles of gravel road, and over the past we've heard, comments from the public. Why aren't we looking at paving these gravel roads? We've also seen an increase in population over the last few years, and then obviously with the influx of traffic during the summer months, these roads are starting to see a little bit higher volumes on them. And also with that local option sales tax that I believe came into play in 2015 and has been doing well, as we look into the future, if that's something that's continued, if we catch up on our current paved roads, looking at possibly paving some of these gravel roads may be an option. So we wanted to study to see if that was financially viable and something that something we could do. So the engineering department has a good idea of what currently exists out there from a surface level standpoint. We know the ADTs, we know a few of the problem spots that from spring and spring thaw, where the bad spots are. But what we really wanted was a data-driven approach to help us to get an idea of the engineering feasibility of each of the roads. We wanted to have a good idea of what it would cost to pave these roads. We wanted to know what the long-term value of paving these roads were. We also wanted to learn more about the community benefit. So that's why last spring we sent out an RFP to multiple consultants, and Short Elliott Hendrickson, or SEH, was selected to do this study for us. Oops, wrong one. Yes. So there's about 6 key areas that we wanted them to touch on. So the first one was the field conditions. We wanted them to, get an idea of what's out there today. So they went out there, took photographs, took some measurements, gravel thickness, road widths, kind of did an overall assessment of the roads to, see what currently exists out there today. One thing I didn't mention in the opener is this: of those 42 miles of roads, it's broken down into 15 different segments, and you'll see those coming up on a later slide. So after they did the kind of a field condition assessment, they moved into trying to determine the current existing condition of the subgrade. So they used a falling weight deflectometer test. It's basically a device that they pull behind a vehicle. They take 10 tests per mile. It's a very short and effective test that's able to get an idea of that subgrade condition, what kind of support it has, and that'll, in turn, they're able to put that into the software and give us information as far as what type of pavement design would be needed on these roads, which in turn will really can drive the cost. After doing that falling weight deflectometer testing, which is just mainly a surface level test, we had them do some geotechnical investigations. So we had them do some soil borings. So they went out and did 32 soil borings throughout those 15 segments of road. With those soil borings, they were able to determine, where those areas, where there was, organic materials. So as you probably know, if you've driven some of these gravel roads, some of them, there's a reason why they remain unpaved to this point, just due to the wetlands and the swamps and the environmental concerns. A lot of them aren't built on the greatest of subgrade materials. And they also use those soil borings to kind of verify their falling weight deflectometer data. So that was something that was good to see. The next kind of key area they looked at was traffic analysis. The county provided the consultant with some traffic data over the last 15 years, and they were able to use that data to forecast into the future. After meeting with them, we encouraged them, or we made sure that they used at least a 4% growth factor for these, for their study, because we know that if any of these roads were to be paved, there's a good amount of people that may start using them, and to try to encapsulate that number of people that would start using them if they were paved is a bit difficult. So using that 4% growth factor was more of a conservative number than we would typically use for any of our other projects. The next area that they looked at was a benefit cost analysis. So this benefit cost analysis takes into account a bunch of different inputs into a calculation and then outputs a number. So some of the inputs that go into this formula are the construction cost, the length of each road segment, current and future traffic volumes, annual maintenance on our gravel roads, as well as annual maintenance on a paved road. They also took into account vehicle operation and maintenance savings. So that value right there would be a vehicle driving on a gravel road versus a vehicle driving on a paved road, what that maintenance savings would be for the traveler themselves. And it also took into account a time savings per mile. someone driving on a gravel road at 45 miles or 40 miles an hour versus someone driving on a paved road at 55 miles an hour. There is a value for that. It's a little bit of a subjective number, but the consultants looked at different studies from other agencies to kind of determine that number. And back to that, so that benefit cost ratio that I mentioned, those inputs go into that formula. And the goal is if that benefit cost ratio is greater than a 1.0, that means that paving that road would be financially viable, that we would see a monetary return on investment. Anything below a 1.0, that would show that it's financially not viable to do that. The next area they studied was a prioritization matrix. This matrix basically was a combination of the traffic volumes that they looked at in their traffic analysis, the subgrade conditions that they looked at with their falling weight deflectometer along with the soil borings, construction costs, those benefit cost ratios that I just talked about, as well as environmental and community impacts. So what they did was they took each of those categories, and each one was scored on a 1 through 5 basis, with 1 being the poorest and 5 being the greatest, the best. And that matrix is kind of what kind of summed all those top 5 key areas up to kind of prioritize which road may be more viable than the others. So this slide here shows a lot of it shows some of the segments combined. I know I said earlier there was 15 total segments we looked at. Some of those segments were next to each other, and it just made it just made sense that if you're paving one, you would pave the other. This chart here shows on the far left, shows the road number. The next column you see is the location of the segment. Where you see that total weighted score, that is that prioritization matrix that I talked about that took into account the traffic volumes, subgrade, construction costs, benefit cost ratios, and those community environmental impacts. That column there is that prioritization matrix, and that the higher the number, the higher the score, the higher on the priority that each of those segments fell. That combined benefit cost ratio there in the next column, that one, like I said earlier, above a 1.0 should be financially viable, that you'd see a return on investment. Anything below a 1 is showing that that's not necessarily the case. And as you can see, none of the roads quite meet that 1.0 cutoff line, and there are some that are very near or below that 0 mark. And then there's some construction costs up there as well, and they vary significant, or a decent amount there. And that's basically mainly due to the soil conditions and the wetland, the peat and organic materials that would be below the surface that may need to be removed. This next slide, just one thing I wanted to point out on here is each of those 15 segments is broken down. And one of the main driving factors in that benefit cost ratio is the average daily traffic, or the ADT. And you can see toward the right of that table, it shows the 2025 projected ADT. To get an ADT that would bring it close to that 1.0 threshold, you're looking at a relatively significant amount of more traffic to get to those levels. And that's shown there in that far right column. Kind of as a conclusion, this study shows that there's really no monetary return on investment to pave any of these roads, but that necessarily doesn't mean that that it's not a good option. Obviously, paving any of these roads would provide, benefits to the traveling public, such as improved travel, reduced wear and tear on vehicle, enhanced safety, more reliability for emergency vehicles, reduced dust, noise, and a potential increase in property values. So just looking ahead, as far as the next steps, I know in our long-range transportation plan comments, I know we've received some comments regarding these gravel roads. So we just want to just kind of see how this study fits into that plan. And then also, we want to work on prioritizing any of these road segments, if any, we would want to look at further. With that being said, what questions do you guys have?
So my question to you is, so none of these have reached the 1.0 threshold. So in the future, as we accomplish what we need to with Lost on our current paved roads, and let's say none of these continue to not reach the 1.0, would we start considering some of the higher ones, like the 0.81 at that point, even though it doesn't reach the 1.0, and even though the cost benefit doesn't say it's a good idea?
That's certainly something that we could look into. Like I was saying, there are certainly benefits to the traveling public for paving some of these roads. And I did look into the past a little bit at some of the roads that we have paved, and some of those numbers are very close to that 1.0 in just a real brief analysis. So I think it's something that we should probably look into, but it's something that would be down the line.
Okay. I just, there comes a point where we have the money to start going after some of those. So my thought was, it should be considered at that point. I don't know that we'd have to look at what, once we've done that, we still have to go back and recondition some of our paved roads, because we know that's on a rotation. So we'll have to determine whether there's money available and whether the legislature allows us to go on with the Lost. So, there are some variables in there. So just my thought that sometimes it's nice to get ahead of the curve, but we want to make sure that we're still taking care of the ones that we have to take care of. So, questions,
Yep.
Commissioner Lee?
Talking about, County Road 36 is the one that I get questioned about a lot, and I know the reasons of why 36 is as low as it is on the priority list. But could you or maybe Tim kind of expound on the environmental issues there with that road as to why that one is so problematic?
Well, that road in particular, I think, has a lot of vertical changes in the profile, which drove the cost up. With this study, we wanted to compare everything on an apples to apples basis. So the design that we wanted the consultant to look at was the same design for every road as far as width goes and shoulder, like lane width, shoulder width, ditches, etc. And that road 36 has some vertical curves where there would be significant grading as well as a lot of environmental and impacts. And in turn, with those added costs, that drove that benefit cost ratio probably down compared to some of the roads that were more level, more without all those difficulties.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thanks. To your point, Commissioner Barrows, that's a road that I think if it probably isn't going to happen for a long time. I understand that it may never happen because of the issues you spoke of, and I know there's issues with actual areas where there's running water underneath that road. But there's a connection there between Aiken County and Highway 6 that is traveled a lot now as it is, and I think that would be an added benefit down the road if we ever get to that point, and it would lead 106 to being a good connecting road too, if 36 was paved. So if we ever get to a point where we're looking at that, that would be one of my first choices that we look at. And I know it's the most expensive choice, but I think it would be the most beneficial too. So since we're talking about unpaved roads, could you or Tim give me an update on dust control?
I think I'm better suited to talk about dust control. As you know, and thank you for asking the question, we're getting close to putting together that contract for 2026, and we've talked at our TAC meetings, and you've received comments from your constituents over the last year. Of course, last year there was no dust control placed anywhere in the county, and that was a decision made early on in the year. And I've heard from all of you about that. You've been relaying some of those messages from your constituents, and you've been processing that. And so I think I reached out recently to a few of you. You were asking me to check on that. So we are planning to move forward with a dust control contract this year based on that feedback that I've received and you've relayed to me through your constituents. And we will, I believe at the next board meeting, we will have a authorization. We get authorization from the board to release competitive bids every single year. And dust control is no exclusion. And so I believe in the either next board meeting or the one after that, we will be pursuing that. And we'll have the contract ready. So this is what I'm hearing, and each of you can confirm. District 1. District 1 is still no dust control, except for County Road 142, which is right by the highway department and does not have a lot of residential traffic. And that's, Commissioner Coring has indicated he was okay with 142, but wants to continue to be responsive to the residents down in southern Crow Wing County to not do those. District 2, I know Commissioner Lepke left. I know that he had received quite a bit of feedback about County Road 56 and his desires to have it in the dust control contract. In District 3, there is none. There is no gravel. In District 4, there is none except for the FAD. And we'll talk about that in a second. In District 5, Commissioner Lee, you and I recently spoke and that you were interested in moving it forward with the county roads, 105, 106, 142, and 36 for dust control. But was not interested because of some of the financial challenges that the SAD has, Second Assessment District, to not provide dust control in those areas. And then for all of the FAD that Commissioner Franzine and others that represent that district at a recent TAC meeting indicated that there is a desire to have a dust control contract for all the official FAD roads in 2026. So that's how we're planning to write the contract, and that you'll be asked to consider at one of the next board meetings. And just want to check in with you if that is correct and what your wishes are.
Can you just expound a little bit about the financial side of it, why we are able to do it with some and why we're choosing not to do it with SAD?
Right. That's a good point. And we did have this discussion. The dust control for the county roads is eligible for local option sales tax, so we do use that. So it's not tax levy based. It is public funds, but it's not property tax levy. And so we have that avenue. In the first assessment district, lost cannot be used, or the second assessment district, lost, it's not eligible to be used on those, and those would be levy based on their township level tax levy. the first assessment district and is a good position to be able to afford that and be responsive to those residents up there. It's about 4 miles of gravel. In the second assessment district, they are not. They're still, because there's 6 miles of road, that doesn't seem like a lot, but it's about $20,000 worth of dust control. And there's so few residents up there, the township level taxes can't really keep up with the hundreds of thousands of dollars we have to put on to resurface the gravel portion every 5 years, and then also dust control. And they're still kind of in the hole for many years, and then save enough money up to be able to have that several $100,000 graveling contract, and then they're back down below. So it's really financial, and I think that's what you indicated to me. So that, I just wanted to check base with everybody to make sure that I've talked to each of you individually, and so we're writing that contract in the appropriate manner that you'll ask to be considering in short order.
That's good. That's all I got.
Can I just go back quickly just to the unpaved road study real quickly, and just the point about the cost-benefit ratio, and how basically what that's saying is that the benefits don't outweigh the cost. If it was a 1.0, it means that you're going to get the same benefit, at least is what you're planning to spend. But that doesn't mean that we still, or you all, can't put together a priority list. And so it might say that it's not financially feasible. We're not going to, in the 20 years, we're not going to be able to get the return on investment. And that's how we approach many different of our roadway investments. But there's a component that all of you know, and that's what your residents are saying. Those quality of life things that Jordan was talking about, wear and tear in vehicles, time savings, and things like that. So it still doesn't mean that we're not going to consider that, or you should not consider it, but it might not be based solely on the financial return on investment like we view many other things. So I look forward to continuing it. I want you to consider that, and as we meet at the TAC meeting here next week or shortly after the 1st of December, we can have another discussion about that, certainly as we move into the final stages of our long-range plan, which will address this. We'll be asking for your inputs on that very subject. What are we going to do with it? And if we do, as a team, which one's going to be first and which one's not going to be first? And put together a strategy for that if you desire. So I just want to wrap that up. It may not get that return on investment, but there's much more to it than when you're being responsive to your residents. Sometimes it might make good sense to you to not always focus completely on that and more from the input and the residents.
Mr. Chair.
Commissioner Coring, go ahead.
Yeah, you know what? I really, really appreciate the study. The study doesn't tell me what I want it to tell me, but I'm not discouraged by the study because, in my 60 years of living in Crow Wing County, I can remember Thompson Road was never a tar road. I can remember 144 when I used to go over to Drozer's Resort and dance up a storm on the weekend. 144 was not a tar road. So it is not unheard of the county to, look at the options of tarring roads in the future. So I'm still going to champion this and figure out a prioritization, at least down in my district, of what I'm going to push for my constituents into the future, because just because it doesn't meet that 1.0, that doesn't mean that, in my mind, the elected people like myself don't think it's a priority, which I think it is a priority. So I'm going to keep pursuing it, but this was really helpful, this study. I think it was a good exercise So I just appreciate that, Tim, and the presenter.
Yeah, George did a great job of leading us through
Yeah,
that. He had-
great job.
Before he came
Great
to
job.
Crow Wing County, he had a little background in geotechnical, so I think he was happy to kind of dive back into those subjects again. Maybe I just want to touch on a quick point is for years, and I've been in District 5 at a couple tough township meetings asking for 36 to be paved. And all of those years, we were just kind of going on our knowledge, what we think. We're seeing water seep out of the ground in the ditches. We're seeing the swamps right there. And it just, in our experience, we know it's very, very expensive to deal with that. And you want to make sure that you're building a good road bed before you pave it. Some of those roads that Commissioner Coring was mentioning, like Thompson Road and some of those other ones, were maybe paved years and years ago, just simply, it was a gravel road, let's put some pavement on it and expect it to last. And we've had varying levels of success with that. We know that the best roads, you take it as a holistic approach. You're down way below the pavement below the gravel and things like that. And those are probably the most expensive things that lead to these high numbers here. But prior to this study, we're kind of anecdotally, on our engineering experience, just looking at the environment, that it's too expensive and it's just not cost effective. But we felt, there's each of you that have gravel roads have been talking about wanting to start potentially converting these gravel roads to pavement. And so we thought it was very important, certainly during the long-range transportation plan, to do an official study, so put that data-driven thing to kind of reinforce kind of what we were thinking in our head, and be able to show the residents and give you the tools maybe to have those conversations and real data and why maybe it's not on the top of the list in terms of financial, return on investment. But as I mentioned, and Paul Coring reinforces that there's more to it than that, that it's not always financial. It's a consideration, but not the end-all be-all. So I just wanted to say thank you to Jordan for that, and I'm glad that we're done with this study, and we'll get to dig into it a little bit more, maybe a little bit more detail at the TAC, or if you come up with some questions, or as we continue on towards finalizing the long-range transportation plan.
Very good. Thank you, Jordan.
All right,
for
thank you.
your presentation. And it was a good presentation. It was a good piece of information for us to have to get ready for the TAC meeting. So thank you very much. Commissioner Coring, you had something you wanted to add on.
Yes. As I'm sure all of us read the Brainerd Dispatch at some point, and I think who puts together the 60 years, the 80 years? Is that Deb? Who puts that together? Do you
Terry
know?
McCullough.
Yeah, Terry puts that together. Anyway, I was just looking at it this morning, and I just thought this was, I wouldn't say interesting, but it's kind of, it's really something. So I'm going to read this. 60 years ago, Marine Private First Class Robert Kunkel, 23, died yesterday at the Great Lakes Naval Hospital from complications of wounds received in Vietnam. He was the first in the area to die, He was the son of Crow Wing County Commissioner Ross Kunkel and his wife Ethel of Fort Ripley. Ross Kunkel had the seat that I hold now and was a county commissioner for 24 years. So, and I obviously didn't know his son, but I did know Ross Kunkel very well. Just a very good family, and just thought I'd point this out. It's kind of sad, but it's something that needs to be pointed out. So thanks.
Thank you. Anything else? We are released. It's not official here, so it's not an adjournment.